In this video, you're going to learn about one of the best places to find community and support as a worship leader. What's up, YouTube? It's Jake with churchfront.com, an online resource for innovative and creative church leaders. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church. Sometimes being a worship leader can feel like an isolating role and responsibility at a local church, especially if you don't have a lot of other local worship leaders you can network with. I always encourage you to be reaching out to other worship leaders in your area, but sometimes just the practicality of coordinating times to meet with each other can be difficult. That's why I'm a huge fan of Facebook groups. And there are two amazing Facebook groups. One's called Worship Leaders Plus, one's called Worship Leaders Collective. There's over 10,000 worship leaders in each of these Facebook groups from all over the world. Recently on the Churchfront podcast, I interviewed Tandy Adams. She's one of the administrators for the Worship Leaders Plus Facebook group. I thought it'd be fun to ask her some questions about worship ministry and what it's like running the Worship Leaders Plus Facebook group. She shares some of the benefits of being engaged and participating with the Worship Leaders Plus Facebook group, and she also shares some practical tips for how you can add value to the group and also receive value from the group. From this interview, you're going to learn that Facebook groups like Worship Leader Plus are a great place to just experience community and support, but they're also a great place to have crowdsourced worship leader training. If you're a new worship leader or you have questions about different aspects of worship ministry, asking your questions in these Facebook groups is a great way to receive a ton of instant and helpful feedback. So without further ado, here's my interview with Tandy Adams, one of the admins of the Worship Leaders Plus Facebook group. Tandy Adams, welcome to the Churchfront podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just pumped to just get to know you more and get to pick your brain about worship ministry. I've been on Facebook for the past, really just for the past few months. I've been a member of the Worship Leaders Plus group. I wish I would have found out about it a long time ago. And then I noticed, like, I keep seeing your name pop up in my Facebook feed all the time, just because you're one of the admins for the group and you're super active and engaging the community of worship leaders there. So I'm like, you know what, this will be fun. I think Tandy, first I just want to meet you, more than just kind of like the random passing comments and stuff like that on Facebook. But then also just to kind of pick your brain about ministry and also hear more about the story of Worship Leaders Plus and what you guys are up to, because there's a lot of Facebook groups online and some of them are like really well run and maintained, and then some of them are kind of not quite that. So I'm just really interested to hear about what it's been like for you and in a team of admins who are just other fellow worship leaders, to my understanding, managing Worship Leaders Plus. So let's go ahead, but just go ahead and introduce yourself to the Churchfront community. I want to get to know you more and kind of your background, where you're coming from, where you're serving at, and just a little bit more about your story and journey into ministry.
Okay, great. Thanks. So currently I serve as youth pastor at First Baptist Church in Alpine, Texas, which is really, truly the Wild West in the middle of nowhere. I've been in ministry 27 years. I'm old. I admit that right up front to many people. So I've done most of my ministry time has been as a youth pastor. I only started leading worship 8-ish years ago. And it was kind of because I was thrown into it and fell in love with it, and actually never planned on being a youth pastor again. And I got here and was talked into the job. So that's what I'm doing. But I'm enjoying it. I also have a college worship team that I lead, and we have a youth team. And so that's really where the majority of my worship leading time is spent. Mm-hmm. I fill in here at the church on Sundays, but mainly it's with college and teenagers. So yeah, I've been in ministry a very long time.
Yeah, a quick question too about just comparing like college ministry and youth ministry worship versus like your Sunday morning? Like, what, from your perspective, what is it like? How do you approach those two things? Like, maybe differently.
Well, I think obviously I'm in a traditional Baptist church. So worship is different. When I learned to lead worship in an Assembly of God church. So just to make a comparison, it's a very different atmosphere when we talk about Sunday morning. And so with my teenagers and with my college students, there's a little bit more of that kind of freedom to flow as we want. It's not quite as structured as, say, a Sunday morning in a Southern Baptist church. It's a structured environment. My teenagers they're not geared that way. And definitely my college students aren't, because they come from a whole bunch of different cultures. So it's a little more, we can do a little more as far as fun stuff or flowing stuff or on the fly kind of stuff, spontaneous, than we can do on Sunday morning.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of listeners in the church front community who they do lead worship for youth ministry and or college ministries, and it is a whole different ball game in a lot of ways. But also then there are some similarities as well. So I just wanted to hear what kind of your perspective on that.
I have honestly found teenagers and college students are usually way more prepared for rehearsals and are excited about learning the songs than adults are.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, often they're making that time commitment to be in the band. Obviously, kind of sometimes with the youth, there just comes more passion and excitement about things like that. And I think it's cool, like the general direction of worship over the past couple like decade or two. Like it's fun and cool to like be in the band and learn how to play guitar and sing and I think it's just a great place to get younger folks involved in ministry. That was my story. My friends and I were in a garage band back in the day, and then at the same time I played bass at my church, small little church in Vermont, rural Vermont. I was as close to the Canadian border as pretty much you are to the Mexican border, and yeah, I just like really latched on to music and worship ministry. So it's cool to see that. I mean, obviously, it just continues to happen in churches all over, and if folks are listening to this podcast and you are help coordinate a youth ministry and youth worship ministry, like keep up the good work despite any drama and dysfunction that you may be experiencing.
It's teenagers; they're just fun.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit now about Facebook and the Facebook group Worship Leaders Plus. And if you guys are going to search that, it's Worship Leaders with a plus sign at the end, right? What's the origin story of this Facebook group? Because today I'm going to just actually get my numbers right here, pulling up my Facebook account so we can actually look at this. Worship Leaders Plus right here. Man, I'm in it so much. It's in my shortcuts on my left side of Facebook. It is up to 11,905 members. So I would love to hear the story behind Worship Leaders Plus.
Well, I did not start it, and I am not the only admin in the group. Mm-hmm. Dale started it I don't even know how many years ago he started it, but just kind of as a place for worship leaders to share their heart, to share ministry, to kind of learn from each other. Somehow it took off. I joined the group at about 2,000 members, maybe. Dale made me an admin at about 4,000 members. But we've grown. The rate of growth has kind of blown me away, because each year it seems to double in the rate of how fast it's growing. Like we just hit 10,000 people in January.
Wow.
And so we're already almost at 12. Mm-hmm. And are we in March yet? Is it March?
March 1st today, I think. So
the growth is just taken off, and it's really Dale's baby. It's Dale's idea. I guess I'm the loudmouth of the group. And so
you're just highly engaged.
That's better than loudmouth. I'll take it. Yeah, opinionated. Yeah, that's me. So I get a lot of, is this your group? It is not my group. It's Dale's group. I just help.
Well, I think you're doing a great job just being really active as an admin and like being in conversation. People really just, I think, respect your opinion, and it's funny. I mean, it's fun seeing like the banter, people picking on each other and stuff like that. What has been your favorite aspect of being a part of the group, and then also just, you know, being an admin in a group? What type of perspective has that brought you as a worship leader?
Well, my favorite part of the group is, to me, it truly has been a community. And it's been a community that has kind of learned and grown, and we've had growing pains, and we've had issues that we've had to deal with as a community. And so there is a lot of banter back and forth, but it's because we all sort of have a history together. We all sort of understand each other. And you know, I grew up in the 80s, so I grew up before cell phones or internet. And if anybody would have told me at 20, hey, you can make friends who live all over the world and never actually meet them and truly be good friends, I would have thought they were nuts. But that's, you know, really, there's no way. But that's the best thing to me about this whole group, is that there is a community. And I do think people genuinely care about worship, about the point of worship, about being better worship leaders, but also about just being better people and making some connections and some relationships. If you're in there at all, you'll hear me talk about relationships over and over. That's important in our churches, but it's important in our lives. You know, God's relational. The Trinity it's a community. It's relational. We were built that way. And I think this meets that. And maybe some people look at it and because it's Facebook think it's superficial, but I see so much more beneath the surface there that's not. I went on vacation with 3 guys I met in the group.
Wow.
We went on vacation together. And, you know, it's a real community.
Yeah, I think we even like haven't quite tapped into, just as a whole. I think we could be speaking about the church world. We could be speaking about just society in general. Like what you said, like even just like less than, like, I don't know, not really much more than a decade ago, like all this stuff, the way that we can connect with absolute strangers across the world is not possible at all. And I think as this technology is kind of risen up, like we don't take it quite as seriously as we should, of like, wow, there is potential to create genuine friendships with people. Of course, being with people in the flesh and blood is always like gonna have a special element to it. Like, you know, Jesus came to be with us in the flesh and blood. I mean, there's a theological element to that as well. At the same time, like, it's insane. Who knows? I can't imagine what's going to be like in another decade. Maybe we're going to have like holographic Facebook groups where we're hanging out with each other or something like that. I mean, I don't know, maybe sometimes I think people would be nicer to each other if we could actually like interact even better. Yeah. But that's just really cool, because I've experienced the same thing with buildingchurchfront.com. You know, just my intention is to create an online resource for worship leaders, and just really kind of taking everything I've been learning and just kind of dumping it online and then engaging with people. And it's been fun to see the genuine just friendships I've been able to make, especially with other creators kind of doing similar things to me, like Dave Dolphin. You know, he's a great example of a new friend I have. We've connected over YouTube, where there would be no reason for us to ever have connected, and I could say that about like probably a couple dozen people now. So it's cool. Like I think the takeaway from that is like, don't underestimate what engaging in online platforms can do. And of course, there's always negative sides, and maybe I would even want to like kind of touch on that too. Like maybe what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced? But for the most part, if you like approach it as, how can I add value to people? How can I help people? How can I just treat people kindly online? Like, there's some cool stuff. You could go on vacations with the people someday, or lots of neat things can happen down the road. So do you have any, well, I guess that's kind of one example. You like went on vacation with members of the group. I was going to ask you, like, what are any other neat stories about just the community, or just the benefits of having this community online?
Well, obviously to me, one of the big things is what I love about our group is there's 12,000. So you're not going to agree with everybody on every issue ever. That just doesn't happen. But when somebody needs help or when somebody needs prayer, this group rises up to that, and they do that. And so for me, that's kind of one of the things I've noticed. And some of the friends I've made, you know, we all go through issues in our lives, and I know who from that group I can message and go, man, it's just a sucky day. Like, I need help, and I know who will help me. And it's really some pretty strong, solid bonds that some of us have developed. And I'm hoping that people in the group are developing with each other, you know, through Messenger or through these type of FaceTime, whatever, that people are really connecting on kind of deeper levels than just what we see in the forum.
Yeah, and that's what's awesome too about these social networks is you can, you know, kind of you can like just sit back and just watch and like kind of participate that way. You can start engaging more in comments, and you can start posting things. Or it's like, hey, if you find someone who maybe has a lot in common with you, it's like reach out to them and connect, you know, even in a more, I don't know, like one-on-one manner with them too. So I've even saw things like floating around, like there's people who've like met their like partners or spouses like through these groups and stuff like that. I don't know if it was in this one or Worship Leaders Collective, the other large Facebook group as well, but it's like cool. Hey, cool things could happen.
Hey, I've told them if there's a marriage in this group, I better be invited.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. What about, I mean, I see the Facebook groups as if people ever have a question about worship ministry, it's probably one of the best places to go and to just like, that's probably, I don't know, like I don't know what percentage, but I feel like 90% of the posts I see are usually like, hey, I have a question. Can you help me? And then sometimes people receive maybe a couple responses. Sometimes it's like hundreds of responses underneath. What are some questions that you see most commonly come up among worship leaders in the group? And maybe, I mean, even if you just like when you think of like the questions you see, maybe I think I've seen trends, but I'd love to hear, like, you've been in the group a lot longer. What are the common struggles worship leaders are dealing with from your perspective?
Well, I guess trends are funny. You know, we've actually joked about some of these being banned, but we get a what key is Revelation song in? You know, those kind of questions. Sloppy wet kiss or, you know, unforeseen kiss. Those will happen forever. Oceans has become a big joke because I think I said a long time ago I didn't like it, and then it just spiraled out of control in that group. So, I mean, we have those trends. We have a bunch of questions on IAMs or the newest trend in this group seems to be lyrics and seems to be tearing apart lyrics. You know, my degree's theology. I love theology. But sometimes I go, oh, can we not have another discussion on the theological implications of one word in one song? But on the other hand, I'm very excited that people think that way, that people are thinking through what they're singing and what they're bringing to their church and to their congregation. It's important. People remember songs. They don't remember sermons so much. Mm-hmm. And, I appreciate that aspect. Sometimes I do get a little tired of. Yeah, and sometimes I think I've made a post maybe a few weeks ago that said we won't talk about reckless love anymore. Like, I'm done. I can't talk. And I honestly didn't hear the song for the first time till like 2 days ago. But yeah, because I have a little rebel streak. Like, if everybody wants to do it, then I just don't want to. Yeah, yep. I'll find something else.
Yep. Yeah, and reckless love is definitely it's the unforeseen or sloppy wet kiss of today. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember. Maybe because there's more people online now, so more people, which means more people kind of like bickering online about things. And I feel like there's probably more controversy about that song today maybe than there was when John Mark McMillan wrote his song. So Who knows? I can't remember. That was like back in 10 years ago, I think How We Loves came out. So yeah, so lots of questions about lyrics and worship songs, and
a lot of too about, do you memorize music? Do you use music stands? How do you do that? How do you get your team to do that? How do you get your team to show up for rehearsal? And those tend to always recycle through there. And we try to be very intentional to not always say, hey, go search the group, because there are new people with new ideas and new questions. And so we try to be patient with those questions being asked over and over.
Yeah, totally. And I think people can, if people are regulars in the group, like I think you can adjust how many notifications you receive from a group and like how much it's on your feed. And then you can just be like, I'm just going to make it a part of my routine to just go to the actual group page, scroll down, engage with the content that I want. Facebook's been really intentional about encouraging group growth. That's where most of the activity is, and really I didn't join many groups until like this past year, because it's just fun, especially with what I'm doing with Church Fund. It's just fun to like see a lot of conversations folks are having. It kind of helps me gauge kind of like, okay, what are the biggest questions coming up? And then I can kind of make my videos and blogs and podcast episodes about those things. But yeah, it's like now when I'm on my feed, it's just like, it's all like the worship leader groups, the worship tech groups, things like that. And it's, I don't know, it's nice because it actually gives me, it is quality content, or at least conversations, maybe not always quality content, conversations that like I care about and it's interesting. And but yeah, people's like, you just have to remember to utilize Facebook's like notification tools to like, if you feel overwhelmed by the same questions, like just adjust it so you don't see them all the time. So, and
when I joined the group at like 2,000 people, I had honestly I was new to leading worship, and so sort of this group taught me how to do that. Because I could ask questions, or I could see people asking questions and think through how to handle that. I'm a big believer in, I'm a pastor. So whatever capacity God wants to use that in, I'm okay with. Youth ministry, college ministry, worship ministry, whatever. The pastor thing I do better than the music thing. I'm very quick to say that. And so where I needed growth was in this whole idea of a worship leader and what that looks like. And so that's why I became so engaged with the group, because it really did help me. That I felt like I had a pretty good handle on how to pastor a group of people, but I didn't know how to make a set list. And I didn't know how to, what are you talking about, Flo? What do you mean? What are the benefits of memorizing my music? I had to work through all that early on. And I feel like this group that's the big benefit of this, is that's what we help each other with.
Yeah, it's like a crowd-sourced worship leader training, basically. You can, I think you're right. I think it's really great for new worship leaders. Of course, like, use that search bar if you can when you first get there to start asking questions. But it's okay, like, if you have something, just ask, just post a question. And then it's cool because you get, like, so many different perspectives. Maybe sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but like, hey, it's better to have a bunch you can work through rather than nothing at all. And that's just another aspect of how awesome the internet age is. I just listened to a podcast on the How I Built This Podcast by NPR, and it was about Wikipedia and how it's like that is a crowdsourced encyclopedia online. And it's just neat how, I don't know, I just geek out about the internet and things like this, and how, again, this technology is so new and so exciting, and then so helpful for pretty much any area of life. You can really be equipped and learn how to do a new skill like worship leading. What the other question, like what have been some of the challenges? I think we kind of touched on them, but like what have been some of the challenges of trying to like moderate a huge Facebook group like that? Especially, I feel like one of the challenges in the church world too is like, it's, we want to be a unified body of Christ, but like, man, church people can be the most opinionated people in the world, and especially in a platform where it's all about like conversation and stuff like that. I guess what has it been like, and like what are some of the challenges that have kind of risen out of trying to moderate the group? Well,
maybe the challenges specific to this group is worship leaders are emotional people generally. And so I think everybody's very passionate about certain things, which is fabulous. And that's what I love about the group. It's a very passionate group. And sometimes, and I do it all the time. Sometimes we let our passions kind of overtake what we're saying and who we're speaking to. There have been many times I've had to jump back and say, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm really sorry. I did not mean for that to sound like I was attacking, because this is just something I'm very passionate about. And so it's kind of trying to let people say what they want to say and not being the Gestapo and shutting down every post, letting people say what they want to say without, we don't want to cross a line. We want it to always be, we are brothers and sisters in Christ. And that's front, that's foremost. Everything else can be secondary, but we don't want to cross that line where we are attacking our brothers and sisters in Christ, as opposed to attacking an idea or attacking a theology. We don't want to attack people. And we've kind of been a little more cautious on even attacking theologies lately, because theology does, I told you I love it. It does need to be discussed. But when you're bringing in 12,000 people, that's a lot of people. And there's going to be a lot of different theology. And so just because we've seen the passion and how that moves into personal attacks, we're trying to gauge back a little bit on some of that, those more divisive theological issues. And that's hard for me, because one of my big theological issues is a divisive one. And so it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut. So I don't do a very good job of it. Let's not lie. I don't. But it's hard because it's a passionate group.
Yeah. What I've found kind of in my own personal experience of like working through any theological controversies or issues is like, I just found that online platforms are really not the place to duke it out. I mean, at least unless if I don't know, I'm trying to think of any appropriate online platforms to do it, but in general, like, you're never going to convince an opposing argument of really anything or much in the comments section of a Facebook post, of a YouTube video, of a blog post. Like, if you're approaching it to try to change someone's mind or like that's practically probably not going to work. Maybe once in a while, but for the most part, not going to work. And then it's just like, or if you're using it to just vent your own feelings, it's like, that's only going to bring negativity and it's really not going to bring anything positive to the world. Right. So
I will say I've had quite a few really good private conversations come out of disagreements on those threads. And we encourage that a lot. We'll say, hey, take this to private message. Simply because I've seen, and there are people that I strongly disagree with so theologically, who are some of my best friends now, because we did that. We disagreed over here, out in public, but then we took it to private, and we came to a point where we can completely respect each other and still disagree. And so we try to make them see that there's value in a disagreement. There's value in hearing another approach. And sometimes if you can take that to a deeper level, you can actually learn something. You can actually change your mind about something and make a new friend.
Yeah, and that's what like I found too is either you have those hard conversations not in a platform where you have all these other opinions there to have the conversation. It's almost biblical, right? I think pretty sure Jesus says somewhere it's like if you have a beef with someone, like you approach them one-on-one and you guys try to work through it. And then like you said, I think you're exactly right. You've seen it yourself that like out of even just private Facebook messages, it's going to be a much more humane conversation than trying to, because like you could try to have a humane conversation with someone in a comments thread, but then other people are going to join in and then it's just going to like light a fire and make it even worse. So that's great advice. Like have one-on-one conversations. And it's like, that's what I was going to say too. It's like, I found most of my like best conversations with someone I disagree with is always gonna be even just in person. So whether it's I'm debating just the existence of God with a friend of mine, like I'm not gonna do that in a Facebook comment section. Like I'll do that like when we're, you know, hanging out over coffee or a beer, or like in a context where we can really focus on each other and engage. And the thing is like, even when you disagree, you're like, I don't know, something about being in person one-on-one with people, you're just not gonna do things you regret, I feel like.
That's because, you know, and we try to make the Matthew 18 principle the guiding force in our group. You know, if you have an issue, then go to that person privately. Let's not air it out for everybody to see. But it goes back to my whole life about relationships. We are relational people. And you're right, when we can talk to somebody one-on-one or face-to-face, then it changes our perspective about who they are and what they're saying. And, you know, all of a sudden they're not this mean guy who hates women or whatever. They become a person, you know, and we see value in that. And it's so much about being relational.
Yeah. I'm hoping one of the takeaways the listeners have from this session and this conversation is that they actually, if they haven't joined Worship Leaders Plus yet, that they actually go ahead and do so. Most everybody is on Facebook. If you're not, hey, I respect you for that. But if you're on Facebook and you really want to just feel like you're part of like a virtual community of worship leaders, I would encourage you to join Worship Leaders Plus. But then I wanted to ask you, like, what's a great way, and this could actually, maybe if they're existing members of Worship Leader Plus listening to this conversation, what's the best way for them to add value to the group? Rather than perpetuating certain problems or issues that you may have come up. So what advice, if someone is to join the group, what would you want them to know about what it means to be a part of the group?
Well, there's so much value in everyone's perspective and everyone's life circumstance and what they bring to the table. And really what I think adds the most value is when people can be honest and can be real and can be vulnerable and we don't need to preach to each other. We need to talk to each other. We need to be open with each other. I think one of my big issues with the church is I don't think people are vulnerable enough. I don't think it's a safe place where people can say, man, I struggle with this, or here's my opinion and I could be wrong. Or people can come back and say, hey, I'm sorry, I screwed up. I shouldn't have said that. And so I think adding value just means being who you are, not trying to be somebody you're not. It's easy on that page to see these guys at these big churches. I'm not at a big church at all. It's easy to see these guys at these big churches and want to be them and try to pretend to be them online, or pretend that value comes in who you are, because you are a child of the King. That's enough value right there. If you want to add value to our group, come and be yourself.
That's a great word. And you're right. It's like it's so tempting to kind of present yourself online and like, oh, it's an opportunity to be someone that I'm not. And then that just doesn't end up too great. You're not really being true to yourself. You're not being honest with other folks. So, well, thanks so much, Tandy. This was just cool to hear more of your story, hear the story of Worship Leaders Plus, and just kind of get more, just get kind of more context from where it's coming from now that, because I see you guys in my feed all the time. If folks do want to reach out to you and ask you any questions, where and how is the best way to do that?
So because I'm 47, I don't spend a whole lot of time on things like Instagram or anything. I am on Facebook. You can, I generally, my Facebook is kind of an open page. I don't make much things private, and I pretty much add anybody who wants on. So you can find me on Facebook, or you can, First Baptist Church Alpine, come to our website, find me on there. And it's fbcalpine.com. We're very creative around here. So just, or Worship Leaders Plus. Anybody can find me there at any time.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Because I think on the group page, you can go to like the admin section and see the admins there and shoot any of you guys questions. So thanks so much for taking the time to have a conversation, and just keep up what you're doing. I think it's great facilitating this community online. And as someone who gets to benefit from that, just really, really appreciate it. So thank you, Tandy.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Tandy Adams. I thought it was a lot of fun just seeing her perspective as an admin of the group, and she's a highly engaged admin. You don't find that in a lot of places on Facebook. I've included a link to the Worship Leaders Plus group below this video. Click on it, request to join, and hopefully you'll be accepted in the group pretty soon, and I look forward to seeing you in there. I try to jump in conversations when I can, and if you're looking for some other practical resources for your worship ministry, make sure you download my worship leading toolkit, also linked below in the description. It contains all of my favorite pieces of gear and software that I use week in and week out in my worship ministry at Mission Lakewood. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please hit the thumbs up button, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the Churchfront channel so you can continue to receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church.